Hi, welcome to the Nordic News Podcast. My name's Bryant, and I'm joined here today by Rory Lynch and Michelle Simonson from Classical King. Thank you for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for coming by, Will.
Yeah, welcome to the station. This is a first time that we've had Nordic News in our studios here at Classical King in Seattle Center.
It's a bit of a drive from Kenmore to Seattle, but what do you guys both do here at King?
I'm the program director of Classical King, so the simplest way to put it is make sure radio happens and is happening when you turn it on. I manage the overall schedule. I supervise our announcers and our production staff. And I work with Michelle. She really shapes the strategy of the station, and I kind of execute the programming so that the service to our listeners, is always there when they turn us on.
Yeah, that's right. So he oversees it in ways that affect the FM radio, traditional radio broadcast audience, but also in our new digital world and streaming everywhere. So it's much more multifaceted than it once used to be. My role as a Chief Content and Engagement Officer is I get the great joy of being able to put beautiful music into the community, but I get to be a part of the strategy to shape the sound of the station, what people get to experience every day, and also to be a part of our ecosystem of culture and arts in our community, which means I help foster partnerships between the station and the rest of the arts community, and then sometimes beyond that too, because one of my biggest aims is to help arts communities and, of course, big arts institutions to small ones be able to grow audiences for what they put on. And they're very, very connected to us since the very beginning. And we're always happy to support and develop new talent and see where the world takes us. But we've got exciting things coming up.
Yeah. How did you both get into the radio world? Do you have any prior experience in radio before coming to Classical King?
A surprising amount. For me, I actually recorded spots and some underwriting on public radio when I was quite young, out in Alaska. And then when I went to college, I was a part of Classical KUSC, which is now known as Classical California, and that was my first job in college. And then from there, I went and worked in music. I have a degree in classical saxophone. And I also have a degree in broadcast. And so I also worked with KUSC later in Los Angeles, and then later became an announcer, and then became an announcer for Classical King. And now I find myself having pretty much a dream job of being able to work in a medium I love, for music I love, and for a community that I love as well. So that's sort of my pathway to Classical King. How about you, Roy?
Yeah, I didn't have a explicit radio background before I joined Classical King, but the program director role is a unique fit given previous studies or work I've done. I was also a music major. I was a music composition major before I realized I'm better backstage, let's say. So I got that degree, and then I got a master's in communication management, which is the easiest way to explain it is it's the science of how organizations work. So, and kind of like structure and project management. And so now, as program director, my job is a lot of operations, logistics, scheduling, but in service of art. And you have to know the art and kind of talk the talk to be able to, meet the format and meet the needs of our listeners. So, yeah, it's kind of it's a mixture of art and science, and that's, you're kind of the eye of the hurricane of everything that's going on around here.
Yeah. So what does kind of the average day here at King look like, making the show happen?
Every day is different.
Yeah, every day is different. I mean, a metaphor we like to use is that the plane never lands, because we're 24/7, and that's part of our commitment to listeners. That's our mission, but it also means that if things fall behind, you always have to catch up, and you have to earn your breaks. The project never ends. So there's a lot of foundational systems that we have to keep rolling, trains that just have to keep going to make sure the radio happens. A really important role is our music director. He shapes the specific pieces that are played, and he's usually 3 weeks ahead when programming music in the playlist. Then on the production side, we're about 1 week ahead, making sure all the audio's ready, all the equipment's good to go, the schedule's done, and then the last critical piece is our announcing team, who bring the personality, bring the storytelling, and they're usually either, preparing a couple days ahead and then they deliver it live in the moment. That is how you would explain just the constant programming we do, and then everything else is special, where it's like we're doing a live broadcast, or we're doing a fundraising, or we're doing a special program for really any reason, or creative ideas or partnerships that Michelle comes up with. So we've kind of got the general workflow that is always going, and then cherries on top that just kind of you ebb and flow, and you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
There's something that's really unique about broadcast and radio in particular. Because of that live component, you're always kind of find yourself in the center of looking forward and looking back, because you're always trying to also plan really far in advance. So you're trying to imagine, for example, hey, what are the stories of features, the sound, and the partnerships we could do? And one example would be we do special music programming for certain times of year, obvious ones, but then also maybe we create a holiday for ourselves to create some special music feature, and maybe it's connected to a partnership, or maybe it's connected to something super local like, I don't know, Seafair. Maybe we'll do a whole week that is all about music that was performed for the water or on the water, and we need to decide that more than 3 weeks in advance. We have to decide that more than a year in advance, really. And also, when is Seafair? So we look at all of those things, and right now I would say maybe we're a little behind, but we actually just decided all the music features we're going to do for the rest of this year. And we're already thinking about the next year. And when we know things like, I don't know, the World Cup is going to come into town, we take that into account too, maybe 2 years ago. So we're already thinking about that while we're also living in the moment and trying to reconcile what did we just do and should we do it again. So that's kind of like the mixture of things. For an everyday person coming into the station, it depends what your role is. So for us, our days might look a little different, but we start pretty early, I would say, for most people. We start maybe at 7 or 8, or when I wake up, I listen to the station. It's something called an air check, where we're always listening. So we're listening to our announcers, making sure, how do things sound? Is the music sounding good? We're always kind of doing that throughout the day, but at the same time, we have like regular work to do. So we have meetings, and then of course, meeting with partners, and our unique role in where we are means we also are probably going to events at night. We might be going to the opera on Friday night or the symphony on Thursday. So our days can look really different depending on how and what time of year it is. But right now, I would say for an announcer that you would hear on the air, their schedules can shift based on who's on vacation. So they might normally be the morning shift every day, Monday through Friday, which means they get here at 5 and they are off the air at 9. But say someone's sick, it might be a little bit longer, or it could be a little bit shorter for someone else. So that's kind of what their day is like, and then the rest of it's prep. And then what our new world looks like, we also do a lot of things for digital. So we do things for maybe our social media. We might be doing some special videos or some special writing and some voiceovers, or we might be making special videos for our listeners, because at the heart of everything we do is in service to our listeners. And so we basically build all this programming for them and for them to have it be accessible to them. So that's a big piece of what we do every day.
And, excuse me, the last thing I'll add is, and Michelle started with this, we do a lot of listening to the station, some critically, some evaluation, but we wouldn't last long in this job if we didn't genuinely enjoy the music we put on air. If you're not a classical music fan, then being program director of a classical music station probably isn't for you, because you're going to be listening to it a lot.
And listening at it in different levels. So Rory and I both got music degrees, so that means we probably know quite a bit about the music. But the other way that we listen to the station is we listen like a listener. So our goal is to listen as if we were listening for the very first time, or we didn't know much about the music, and see how do we feel invited in to listen to the music more? Is it accessible for people experiencing it for the first time? Because oftentimes that's where people discover classical music, is either through the radio or maybe our YouTube video for the first time, and then they discover our stream and our app, and then they can take them with them wherever they go.
Yeah. You mentioned obviously that, I'm assuming there's not host 24/7. Is there someone here in the studio 24/7, just making sure everything's going to plan?
There is not someone always on site, but it's a team effort, and if something goes wrong, we will always be ready to respond. And that could, be someone like me coming in to get things back on track, or our chief operator getting in his truck and driving up to Tiger Mountain because we blew a fuse. You can't. You have to find a balance of, it's impossible to have 24/7 presence, and perfection is impossible, but we try to have all the systems in place or backup plans to troubleshoot with minimal disruption. I would say 5 a.m. to midnight on weekdays is like prime time. There's always someone live here,
Just nearly. As an independent nonprofit radio station, we're a pretty small team. So other examples could be like maybe stations that you've heard in your neighborhood, like KUOW, which has maybe about closer to 120, 200 employees. And maybe KEXP, which has a larger staff too, of maybe about 60. We're about 20 or so. So we have to really think creatively about what is it that every person does here, and if they have multiple functions, like how are we all working together? Because definitely Classical King and this kind of media, from the programming standpoint, is definitely a team sport. We have to be able to do many things. Many of our announcers are also producers, for example, or they help with engineering or filming. So it's a very bit more multifaceted career these days, and that's kind of where digital is taking us when we look at the future of what this business can be.
Yeah, you have to wear many hats, and kind of the nature of what we do is really mission-centric, service to the listener, and so coming in with the mindset of like, oh, this is my job, this is the one thing I do, just is not not a you have to have many hats to make the whole thing work.
All right. Yeah. You mentioned that you're a nonprofit. How do you fund yourselves if not for ads?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's the heart of everything we do. The listeners are the ones that support the station. So the community of listeners are the primary way that we stay alive in this community. It's through their gifts and their generosity that we get through fund drives or different types of fundraising throughout the year through our advancement team, and that's what funds everything you see in this room and then everything you hear on the air all year long. So we really owe a lot of what we get to do every day to our listeners, and we try to do everything we can to give it back to them, because it's something really special to be a part of a radio station like that's been independent. There's something really cool about knowing that it was founded, for me especially, it's really special to know it was founded by a woman who was a pioneer in broadcast. Her name was Dorothy Bullitt. She bought and started a broadcasting company and was pretty much the only woman for 50 years in the United States who even ran a broadcasting company. And since it started in 1948, this station has always broadcasted classical music. We are one of the very few stations in the nation that has ever done that continuously. And so that means we have a lot of history to uphold, a lot of tradition, which is special. We have a very big library. We've done a lot of innovation over time, and now we have a beautiful new studio, thanks to a lot of our generous donors. And we're looking into our future to stay relevant and to be a part of the community and continue to be a part of the community even after big changes have happened in the world, which has changed our funding models, because we used to get some money from the government and we used to get some other things. But now the world is a different place and we're pretty much completely on our own, and we're not tied to a university or others like others are. And so we find ourselves needing to innovate and be in that digital space to find a way for people to continue to find us.
How do you kind of build and interact with your listeners? How does that work for radio?
Yeah, the good news, we've conducted some studies, and the good news is, regardless of income, demographic, where you live, there is a love for classical music. The studies show that it is even across the board, regardless of background or whatever demographic variable we want to pull. And so, age especially, there's a stereotype like, oh, classical music, it's old and stuffy. No, it's relevant. But the twist is, you have to meet listeners where they are. Like, what platforms do people use to engage with media? the pandemic changed a lot, obviously. People don't drive as much. Streaming, became way more popular. And it wasn't just, I'm going to turn on the radio and that's the classical station. So we kind of have to do two jobs at once. We have to steward our radio fans who enjoy us through that platform, and I like this, please present the classical music. And then we also have to introduce ourselves to people who may not even know we exist. Like your 2026 car doesn't have a radio. How are you going to find us? And that's apps, that's smart speakers. Who knows what the future holds? But the love for classical music is there, and people like the programming. But if they don't know if we're not on the radio, if it's just the radio, then we're missing a lot of people.
Indeed. So part of my role as Chief Content Officer is also overseeing our digital strategy, which is a really important piece of our future. When we talk about people discovering us, people literally used to just turn on the radio and turn the dial until you find what you like, right? Well, these days, where do you think people discover music for the first time, typically?
Streaming services.
Anyone in particular that comes to mind?
Spotify, namely.
Well, it's actually YouTube. Oh. That's the number one place where people go for music discovery these days. And so we know, hey, we're not going to compete with Spotify, and we're not going to compete with YouTube. So we have to think really carefully about what it is that we do uniquely. And what is it that we can do that those big giants can't do? And there are a few things. So if everyone is going here and they're on their phone, it's really cluttered and busy in the internet world online, right? There's a lot of things that will distract you and pull your attention away. So just like what Rory said, we have to find ways to get to where people are. So that means changing our approach, where radio hasn't typically ever had to market itself or had to have a strategy for doing that because it was ubiquitous. It was in a car. Everyone had a radio. And so these days, we think about that as we think about the programming that people love and we know that they'll like, but we have to find a way for them to find it. So what we do is we take what we do best, which is our on-air programming, and it's our ability to be local and be part of the community and to be a part of the arts here and to be talking about things that matter to people who live locally or regionally or they miss living here. So we really focus in on that when we think about our strategy for on-air, what we sound like, our storytelling, all of that. But then we think about how can we turn what we do best that we do on air and make it digital too. And do it in small bite-sized ways to help remind people that we exist, but also to introduce ourselves for the first time. So maybe that's a digital ad on YouTube. Maybe that's a video from our Northwest Focus live show. Maybe that's one of our 2 newsletters that goes out every week. Maybe it's our update for weekly update videos, So there's a whole bunch of different methods that we are, been testing and trying out and seeing if we can capture those people who might not know about us yet, or maybe they've forgotten about us.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a world where the radio kind of fades away and King becomes almost entirely streaming censored?
Well, I will say that people have been saying for 35 years that radio is going to die, but radio is still here. So I would say there could be a future where we might have more digital listening than FM listening, because digital listening can go anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And we can see the metrics today. We see where everyone listens. And we're often surprised also where people listen all over the world. But we know that the core base of our listeners will likely always be regional, be a part of us, who we are here, or have some connection to us. So we focus on that. But everything we think about when we think about the future is to be in service of a couple different things. One, making the station relevant. And then 2, providing a good digital listening experience and growing that listenership. Because if the only way we'll survive is based on listener support, well, we have to continue to grow those listeners, right?
Right, yeah. Speaking of kind of how radio would proceed in the future, how do you see AI impacting the industry?
AI is an interesting topic, as they say, a frontier, right? So AI definitely, when it comes to our business and in public media, but specifically for Classical King, we really think about trust, right? And we think about one of the most valuable things we do is being human and being on the air. It's human curated. It's a part of the ethos of who we are. So it's really something that we take seriously and we think about it, because how can AI be a good tool, a good partner to people who make the human experience what it is? And are there things that can help us, for efficiency, or are there things and tools that can help us when we're, filing and collecting names, when we're working together with our listeners? But we don't ever think about it as a way to replace what we do on air or replace the programming that we do, because it's very intentional. And we also think a lot about the days, the times, and what you are doing, like when you're going to school or when you're in the car or maybe when you're having lunch. We actually think about all of those things and what's happening in our community. An example of that would be what we have planned for the World Cup, which is...
Yeah, so the World Cup's coming in, and we are making a commitment to be as live as possible because it's a really big event and it's impacting people's lives. And we're not going to turn to Sports Center, but we want to stay relevant. And if the traffic's really bad and you're stuck in rush hour and we're playing nice, calming classical music, we want to have that human connection. I think in terms of AI and the role it'll play in the future for radio stations, there will be a choice where leaders of radio stations, it's like, is this part of our identity? Are there certain lines that we won't cross? Like, our station will never have AI replace the human voice when delivering, announcing. That's just not who we're going to be. And so, other people may have different approaches, but that's kind of like those next steps on, AI can be great in terms of production or research, but in terms of the human connection and presenting the music, that's a intentional choice.
Yeah, absolutely. You also mentioned kind of circling back to the World Cup thing. Do you see this station as also a way of conveying information to the community beyond just music?
In some ways, yes. I mean, our goal is to help inform them, and that comes through different ways. We do live read promos where actually every week, some people don't know this, we give free promotion to arts organizations that may not be able to afford it. And we also provide underwriting at a lower cost than commercial underwriting or commercial ads for commercial stations. And we pretty exclusively, offer those things to our partners and people in the arts in a way to help them grow audiences. So in a lot of ways, we think about how are we local, how do we help our community, and how do we stay focused on that?
Yeah, the non-music information we share, it usually depends on the context involved. And the world, because the music always comes first. We're a classical musical station. People want to listen to the music. But for an event as big as the World Cup coming to Seattle, if we don't mention it, it's like, do we not know what's going on? Are we not engaged with people's real life experiences? But if we do it too much, then we're going away from what people, came here in the first place. So there's always a balance and trying to find, the right mixture. The music always comes first. And, Classical King, we like to also be the alternate option. The world's crazy. There's chaos. It's very high paced, but we want to be a consistent, reliable source of classical music, bring you comfort and joy. And so trying to find that middle ground where we can feel connected but also not get away from our core purpose.
And we know we have great partners in our community that do news really well. KOW, KNKX, there are more. They do news well, so, we don't need to also do news. But it is, like he said, to be relevant. So a choice that we might make, for example, is, hey, we know Australia and the U.S. men's team are going to play soccer. Well, there's going to be a winner, and there's going to be someone who doesn't win. So we can make the intentional choice to, maybe in our playlist, we'll have two options, and it might not be national anthems. It'll be something we have chosen that we think, hey, this will be a fun way to, share some news if people are wondering why the traffic is so bad. Well, we just found out that the U.S. men's team has won. So we're going to play America the Beautiful, written by, in our style, right? Or here's a folk song from Australia. We just heard that they won down over at Lumen, something like that. And that still keeps it about the music, let's hear this great music, and also this is what's happening in your community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is kind of it for the questions I have. I'd like to open the ground to Grady, my man behind the camera, if he has any extra questions he would like to ask.
Not specifically. I feel like we went pretty into that. Well, I guess I have a question. In your opinion, what do you think the sort of rock of classical music is?
Time period? No, I'm just kidding. I think it might depend. Maybe Rachmaninoff.
Beethoven goes hard though.
That's true.
Beethoven, like, there's been so many metal covers of like Moonlight Sonata.
That's true.
I mean, Baroque also is like very rhythmic.
There's also some organ. There's some organ works that are pretty rock and roll, I would say. But
it depends on like the musicals. Like Stravinsky caused riots with some of his premieres, so that's pretty rock and roll because it was just cutting edge at the time.
yeah, there's cutting edge
Disruptive.
and disruptive. We kind of have to think too. Back in the day when things were premiered, it depends what era you were in, how the music was experienced. Because it could be in someone's house, it could be in a concert hall, or it could be almost more like concert hall but lounge/bar. So depending on what the scene was, how it was experienced for the first time really might have mattered. But there were also touring musicians, and there was Liszt. Liszt was like super over the top. Like there was a story where he would like come in and like have gloves on and like a saber, and like he would sit down at the piano, and like women would like pinch him and take like try to get mementos from him, like from his clothes. It's wild. Like it sounds like a rock and roll star kind of thing. But you never know. There might be a rock star in our future right now who's out there playing, and we might discover them soon. I mean, people are still writing this music today, so it's definitely not dead and it's not dying. But there are a lot of opportunities to still investigate what happened in the past and still make it relevant to today. So a lot of options for rock and roll. I gotta think more on that one.
Yeah.
Brahms also maybe a little rock and roll.
If the violin line could also be a sick guitar solo, then it's rock and roll.
Yeah. Okay.
That does remind me. Does King ever air live music?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Almost every Friday night, we have a show called Northwest Focus Live. So we bring in musicians who have a connection to the Pacific Northwest, and they range from professionals all the way to youth or academy level students. And we get to do a little bit of interview so people get to know who they are, and we also hear them perform live on air. Right here from our studios in partnership with Seattle Opera. So we have a whole other room that gets turned into a live room at that time. And that's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
we also do a few other fun things.
Yeah, there's a lot of live broadcasts of partner organizations. So that could be the Seattle Symphony, their opening night. We'll be there, broadcasting it live, announcing it in the back. We have a long-standing and very valued partnership with the Seattle Chamber Music Society. They bring in world-class musicians every summer, and now they have a winter festival, and that is like 10 to 12 live broadcasts of chamber music. And so we broadcast all of those live and have been doing so since the festival started over 40 years ago. There's there's the Met Opera every Saturday. If there's a live broadcast, we'll turn on the Met Opera matinee. Sunday nights, we'll do the Compline service from St. Mark's Cathedral. And so live is part of it.
Live is definitely part of it. And so that also means accessibility is a big piece of what we do, right? Not everybody can make their way down to the symphony or the opera for a variety of reasons. So another thing that we work with our partners at the opera and the symphony is we get recordings from them from their season, and then we have them recorded, mixed, and then we rebroadcast them again later. So that way people can enjoy them if they weren't able to go, or if they want to enjoy it again. And so that's a commitment we have, and we've been doing it for forever, for many, many years. And I don't know if you guys can see this this tape machine right here, but we actually, during the pandemic, there was an entire archive of reel-to-reel tapes for the Seattle Opera, and some of them, over time, they can disintegrate. So one of our engineers and announcers here, Mike Brooks, he took them and digitized them for them, and we actually played them. Some of them had not even ever been heard since they were recorded in 1960s, for example. So there's a lot of preservation that we can do, but also a way to reshare those experiences again. And that's a big part of our mission and being able to make the music possible to be heard.
The live broadcasts are also a part of music discovery for people who may not be familiar with classical music. You know, we're free. You don't have to dress up. You don't have to go downtown. But oh wait, I like this, and then I'll go. You know, we are the top of the funnel and introducing what could be classical music to somebody for the first time. And if they like what they hear, then they're like, yeah, you know what, I will go support our local arts organizations. And we'd love to be the megaphone, you know, that can kind of broadcast to people who may not experience it otherwise, you know, the different offerings going on.
And one of the neat things that we've been able to do since they started is there's an organization called Live Music Project. And what they do is they coalesce like all of these ensembles, and they have all these volunteers that basically put an online billboard out there for all of the music making in our community. It doesn't matter what level, but for classical music. So we partnered with them, and we have a special Northwest focused concert calendar, and we work with them to basically highlight things that happen in people's communities. And so if you're not ready to take yourself all the way down to Benaroya Hall, maybe you would like to go check out a community concert in your neighborhood. So we do an initiative twice a year too, where we reach out and partner with all of the ensembles, and we encourage them around their season starts to be able to submit. So that way we have plenty that we can help promote, but also to give them a spotlight too, to remind them and to help support them. So those are some of the fun things that we do get to do related to live broadcasts, live events. This summer we have something fun. If you guys are in town, we will be having our very first live music festival here at Seattle Center on July 5th. And we're really excited about that. It's going to be called Seattle Center Classical. And it's going to involve the Seattle Symphony, the Seattle Opera, the Greater Seattle Choral Consortium, and the Seattle Chamber Music Society and their concert truck. And so we're excited because it's a free event outside, kind of like all of the ethos mission stuff we do, but we're going to be able to invite the whole community to a big central cultural hub and for them to get to enjoy some of these ensembles maybe if they've never seen before in a new setting.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you for joining me here today. This was fantastic to talk to you guys about all this stuff. Yeah.
Likewise. Thank you, Nordic News.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're excited. We're excited for you guys in the future of your show.